Here we are back again. I've got a special guest, Robert Spencer. He has been a number of times with me. We have done some terrific. Actually, I've really enjoyed the times I've been with you unpacking Did Muhammad Ever Exist? I know you're coming out with a new rendition of that book. Do you want to say anything about that? But first of all, hello.
Yeah. Hello, Jay. It's good to see you. And yes, thank you. Did Muhammad Exist? Revised and Expanded Edition will be out July 13th, and it's available for pre-order now at Amazon and Barnes and Noble. And I'm sure you can, if there are any bookstores that still exist, you can walk in and ask them to order it. The new edition has 25% new material, including many new discoveries that have come to light since I wrote the first edition about 10 years ago. And I think that you'll find that I also took the opportunity to answer some objections that arose after the first edition was published. And so I think you'll find this to be what I wanted it to be anyway, is a comprehensive introduction to the case for the idea that Muhammad is more legend than historical figure, and that the Quran was developed by a committee much later than it is much later than it is generally understood to have been formulated, and that Islam itself arose in a different time and place from what is generally understood. There are extraordinary and important implications of all that we have discussed and we can discuss again. But in general, obviously, it is a very serious challenge to traditional Islam, and it is really just a historical inquiry that any believing Muslim ought to take seriously and look into for himself or herself, because obviously you don't want to be spending your life building it on principles that are based on quicksand and that ultimately are not true. And so I invite everyone to read the book and contact me and tell me why it's wrong if you can. Many have tried. I don't believe any have succeeded.
Okay, thanks so much. Now, we're going to segue into what happened last Sunday at Speaker's Corner. You have not met Hatun Tash. I have known her for about 8 or 9 years. She was on my team. I helped train her up, get her up and running there at Speaker's Corner so that she could engage back and forth. When I got to know her, her English was absolutely hopeless. She has come a long way, and she is Turkish. She has grown up in a Muslim family. Her father was an imam, still is, and she had to leave Turkey because of her faith. Had to flee to Britain, and that's where she is now. And I remember introducing her to Speaker's Corner maybe back in 2012, 2013. I can't remember the right year. And the day she came down, she never stopped coming. She just fell in love with Speaker's Corner. So she has been a significant force at Speaker's Corner, especially since I've now left in 2017, 4 years ago. She has taken over my ministry there. And she is well known for being very provocative, and probably more so than anybody I know. I've never seen somebody who will go to the furthest. She will push the envelope as far as it will go. She does that purposely because it's Speaker's Corner. Speaker's Corner is the only place you can do this. I knew that, having spent 25 years there. I realized that I could not say what I wanted to say, or I could not even test what I wanted to test on university campuses. That got closed down to me in 2010. I was not permitted on any university campus to do a debate or even to do a talk to do with Islam because of that uh, real fear, I think, by university educators that I was a hate preacher or I was an Islamophobe. Certainly, when I even went onto the streets of London, I would try to have open airs at streets, and I got shut down almost immediately by the Muslims who brought the police to shut me down. But one of the places we could do and continue to do this was at Speaker's Corner. It was the only place where we could show that Charlie Hebdo cartoons when those 12 people were killed back in 2015. We got up on the ladder and showed every one of them, and boy, did they get incensed. They got huge reaction from that. So we have used Speaker's Corner as a place field test our new material, push the envelope, and see how far we could go, and see what kind of reaction we got. Because you get immediate reaction there. It's one of the best places outside of YouTube, and YouTube in some ways has taken over for that, and you get immediate reactions the same way. But in this case, Hatun has become a what's the word I want to use? Has
A
become
lightning
a
rod. A lightning rod?
thank you. That's the word. She has become a lightning rod for radical Muslims because of what happened a year ago, almost a year ago, with this whole Qira'at argument, with the 26 Qurans that she found, 26 Qira'at Qurans that she herself went and found and bought and then took down to Speaker's Corner in 2016 and held them up. I'll put a picture right here so you can see us doing that. And that she did not once but three times in one summer. By the last time, we almost didn't leave the corner. And because of that, that has just festered and festered and festered. And then 4 years ago, for 4 years, I'm sorry, and then a year ago, you had Muhammad Hijab finally ask the most disturbing question of Yasir Qadhi's career, and that is, what are you going to write on that blank sheet of paper? And once he just destroyed any notion that there was any the preservation of the Quran, his in fact, most of his integrity has pretty much gone out the window because of that interview. Now, what has happened is Hatun continued to push that envelope, and she came down to the Quran with holes drilled in it, 5 holes drilled in it with a drill. And she would hold them up and say, "You've got holes in your Quran," referring back to holes in the narrative. The standard narrative has holes in it that he coined in that interview. Not only that, when Samuel Paty, the French teacher who was killed for introducing one of these Charlie Hebdo cartoons and was beheaded, she immediately went down to the corner and she would hold up all the cartoons that had killed Samuel Paty. And then more recently, what she has been doing is she's been wearing the shirt and the t-shirt. Now, I'm just going to show you, I'll put it up, but I'm just going to show you, you've seen probably the original one. This is the original one, and here's a very young Muhammad. He has got a sword in his hand, and you have all these heads are on the ground there, blood everywhere. And over here is a pen. And he's pointing to the pen, and he's saying, "Mama, he hurt my feelings." Screaming out, "He hurt my feelings." So what she has done, she's taken the same picture, and instead of "Mama, he's hurt my feelings," she has written, "I'm so exceptionally offended by this bigot for drawing me." And she took that down to the corner. Irony upon irony, the very thing this cartoon is about is what happened to her. The very thing that this cartoon is depicting, somebody putting a picture of Muhammad caused such a furore last Sunday that they started confronting her. You saw the videos. They started threatening her. One fellow pulled his trousers down to show his genitalia to her, think that would shut her up. The police finally had to come to surround her, and once the police came, then it just went amok, and they finally then took her out and they arrested her and got her out of the corner. Now, most of the people who have responded, almost all the ones who have responded, are for Hatun. They're praising her, they're supporting her, they're exceptionally. There's an exceptional amount of support for her in both the video I put up and the two videos that Hatun has put up. But there are a few Christians that are upset with Hatun, and what I want to do, since you are very much along the same ilk as Hatun and myself and David Wood and Sam Shamoun and Al Fadi, we are all known as provocateurs. We are all known as polemicists. We are well known for people who push the envelope, who go further than most people are willing to go. I had done it for 25 years at Speaker's Corner. Hatun is doing it now. You have done it in your books, in your writings. And I understand a number of years ago, there was 2 men who came to kill you. If you want to just say something about that, because not many people may know about that.
Well, yeah, I think people generally know about the Muhammad art exhibit and cartoon contest that was in Garland, Texas in May 2015. But not many people know that I was actually involved in it, because I get people all the time when I used to speak around. Now, after COVID, I've been in the house for over a year. But when I used to speak around the country, people would sometimes say to me, "Did you ever hear about this event in Garland, Texas?" And I was one of the co-organizers. I was a speaker. In any case, I was there at the time. We were showing, I actually gathered together a number of historic images of Muhammad. out of the Shiite tradition and out of some other sources. And we had them blown up and put on easels around the place. And we had a contest before the event, Pamela Geller and I, and it was to find a Muhammad cartoon that was awarded a $12,000 prize. The winner was Bosch Faustin, the great ex-Muslim cartoonist who drew a picture of Muhammad saying, "You cannot draw me," to the artist, and the artist saying, "That's why I must draw you." And that was really that had to win because it encapsulated our whole purpose in having the event. It was 5 months after the massacre at Charlie Hebdo. And what we wanted to do was show that we were not going to bow to violent intimidation. We were not going to validate bullying and encourage more bullying by giving the bullies what they wanted, which was that we would not draw Muhammad. We were going to stand up for the freedom of speech. There's a whole lot to this. Really, you could date if anybody ever there's this young man, a young Muslim who has written me recently, and he said he's writing a biography of me, and I think
A Muslim is writing it.
yeah, I'm gonna read that with some interest to find out what I did. But in any case, if he were writing a real biography, you could date my life as BG and AG before Garland and after Garland, because Garland blew everything up. In my life, in Pamela Geller's life, she got death threats. There was a plot to kill her in New York after that, and ISIS, death fatwa, and so on. And I had all these Christians tell me that it was a terrible thing. My church didn't want me around anymore. And many, many things happened as a result of
What actually
Garland.
happened there? After what happened
Oh,
outside?
what happened was uh, we had the event. It went very well, actually. It was well attended, about 300 people there. And Geert Wilders was a speaker. And we gave the award to Bosch for the cartoon. Everybody spoke. And we were actually wrapping up. And Pamela was doing a interview with Breitbart. And they had wanted to talk to me as well. I'm standing there next to her, ready to do the interview, and people are talking, milling around, looking at the exhibits. And the one of the people on our security team came running in, said there's shooting outside. We have to get you to a safe area. They took us into an area of the building where we were under guard. We were in there for hours, and the people who come to the event were also, they led them to another hall inside the conference center where we were, and they stayed there for hours. And the whole area, I understand, was swept. There are a whole lot of strange things about that evening, Jay, that have never been answered, probably never will be answered. For one thing, there was an FBI undercover agent who'd been in touch with the shooters. They traveled from Phoenix, from the Islamic Community Center of Phoenix, to Garland to kill us. And this FBI agent was egging them on, telling them tear up Texas and so on. And the FBI has stonewalled all our attempts to find out what happened, why they knew that this was going on and didn't tell us, why they didn't have guards there if they knew that there was going to be these two violent people coming. As it happened, we spent quite a lot of money on security. We had well guarded the building, and it was that saved our lives and the lives of the people who were in the
So what
audience.
happened outside? I don't think many people know.
They drove up. The FBI agent was in the car right behind them, and
Really?
they.
So he was there.
Oh, not only was he there, it's so strange, Jay. It's such a strange story. I wish I knew what happened. The FBI agent was right behind them. They drove into the parking lot. These two men, Ibrahim Simpson and Nadir Sufi, from the Islamic Community Center of Phoenix, and the FBI agent took a photo of one of the people that we had guarding the event. And then, right after he took the photo, Simpson and Sufi came out of the car, and one of them shot that same man and wounded him, didn't kill him. And then there was another man there. I don't believe it was the same one who was wounded, but another man there. We've had very conflicting reports about who exactly it was. Shot Simpson and Sufi dead. And they had actually, very carefully planned it out, and they'd even approached an entrance to the building that was the most lightly guarded, which may mean they may have had somebody on the inside. The FBI came to this very office right after that, and they got the names of the people who'd bought tickets from me, and they found one of them that they said was involved with the shooters, but they wouldn't tell me any more details. So maybe he had given them information about where the place was lightly guarded. So it was just by the providence of God that we were not killed, and they were. So there were many, many Christians after that telling me, this is a terrible thing that you've done. You've mocked another religion. You should be respectful, charitable, kind, loving, and instead you're making fun of Muhammad and Islam. This is completely unchristian. This is a lot like what Hatun was told
Just read what
here.
these people have said, and then I want you to
Yeah,
respond, because this, in some ways, you and Hatun are very similar. You do go and you both push the envelope much more than I have done, and that's why you're the perfect person to ask this question. So,
incidentally, Jay,
I'm
my family was in Turkey and was exiled for not converting to Islam in 1916, and that's why I'm here talking to you now. But so we have that in common as well. But both our families left Turkey because of our faith, or both she and my family left Turkey because of our faith.
you are very similar. I've never thought of that. Okay, I didn't hear that. I didn't know that. Here's Isaiah 40 colon 22. That's his title. While wearing an offensive t shirt exposes the Muslims as thin skinned and violent because of their brainwashing, this does not seem at all an appropriate way to share the gospel. Obviously, they're going to be upset at any truth they hear. So, is it wise to throw unproductive yet flammable gasoline on that fire when you're not surrounded by protectors who can shut down the opposition? Soho Knight says this. Put simply, if anything happens to Hatun, her blood will be on your hands, referring to me. Hatun has a simple faith and puts her trust in you. All of you encourage her to commit suicide. Were you not? Where are the protests? Where were you? Where are the funds for housing security and protection? As Christians, we must challenge and we must proclaim the gospel. We are not called to provoke and incite the demons. Noel Carroll says
Oh
this.
my, there's so much that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Noel Carroll says, Jay, I go to Speaker's Corner quite a bit, and in principle, I agree with you, brother. I'm an evangelical Christian who worked in the Middle East for 8 years, but regarding Hatun, I really believe, as other Christians equally believe, she oversteps the mark all too often. She did not have to wear that shirt to get her point across. I do not agree with her biblically. I also do not think that you can agree with her biblically. Okay, I won't read the rest of it because it then gives some other examples. What's your, I mean, you've heard those three different opinions from three different people, all of them Christians, claiming to be Christians. What would be your response? Since I'm sure you have got these kind of responses right through your own ministry.
Oh, this was the story of my life in 2015. This is what everybody was telling me, and I lost friends at that time, very close friends, Christian friends who thought that what I had done was terribly unchristian, and so on. They made a lot of the same arguments, and one of them was, like the Soho night. No, it's anyway. Somebody saying we must not provoke. Oh, it was Noel Carroll. She oversteps the marked all too often. Didn't have to wear that shirt to get her points across. Um, the idea that this is just gratuitously provocative, and that is somehow wrong from a Christian standpoint. There's very important considerations here. One is that the idea of provoking Muslims is, in a certain sense, feeding into the sensibilities that they have that are based on the Quran, and that we should not be encouraging. What I mean is that bowing to violent intimidation only invites more violent intimidation. And so if you say, I'm not going to insult Muslims by wearing this shirt, I'm not going to insult Muslims by drawing Muhammad, then what do Muslims think? You are submitting to Islamic sensibilities, and that is understood by Muslims as a fulfillment of their Quranic duty to humiliate you.
Mhm.
You have to pay the jizya with willing submission and feel yourself subdued. as chapter 9, verse 29 says. Humiliating the unbelievers is a divine commandment. And so when you say voluntarily, I'm going to not do this, I'm not going to provoke you, they see that as you are acknowledging our superiority, you are bowing to our hegemony. And this is not something we should be encouraging as Christians. It's not a Christian. It's not a good Christian thing to do to encourage somebody in their delusions and in the evil acts that they do. That, as a matter of fact, is a very unchristian thing to do. We also have an obligation of charity, not just to Muslims, but to our own people as well. And bowing to violent intimidation, in encouraging more violent intimidation, is doing a grave disservice to our own people, our own families, our church, our faith, all the people that are going to be facing the violent intimidation in the future. And they'll say, well, your previous generations, they declined to draw Muhammad because we told them not to. And now we're telling you not to build churches higher than the mosques, and not to make public display of your faith. And what are you going to say? You've already set the precedent that you're going to bow to what they want, or they'll kill you. And so
One of,
it's
and I
also,
agree with you absolutely, and in some ways we're both talking from the same point because we both do the same thing, and we almost understand that this is not just this is a cultural problem, and a lot of the people who are upset tend to be Americans, tend to be Europeans.
yeah.
I don't
Well,
get
that's
this.
another thing, Jay. People think that Christian love means being nice.
Okay,
And
go ahead.
Christian love and being nice are not the same thing. Like if you were an alcoholic and you're destroying your life, and I don't say anything because I want to be nice,
No,
that's not doing you any service.
right.
I have the Christian responsibility to say something or to try to get you help, even if it's going to anger you and make you dislike me. That's a cross I have to carry, and that's not being nice.
No,
But in American culture, it's taken as one for one congruence that to be spiritual, to be Christian, even among very devout, very believing, faithful Christians, they think we have to be nice. We can't offend people. Offending people is ipso facto sinful. When actually there are all sorts of things in the scriptures, speaking the truth in love, so on, speaking, preaching in season and out of season, making it very clear that there might be times when you're going to be giving offense by doing this, and you have to keep doing it anyway.
can you give me some? One of the things that came up is this is not biblical. Now you're giving some verses. Can you give me some example of either Christ or someone else who was confrontational, who did push the envelope, and that
About
we
Elijah.
as as an example as a paradigm?
Elijah, 1 Kings 18. And he's there with all the priests of Baal, right?
Mhm.
And they're or whatever god, and they're crying out to their god, and he's mocking them, making fun of them. He says, "Shout louder! Maybe surely he's God. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's on the road." And uh, this is if you did that now, uh, all these Christian leaders, Rick Warren and who knows who else is going to say, you can't mock their gods like that. That's not Christian. Well, look, it's not being disrespectful to the people to show that you don't have any respect for the falsehoods they embrace. And you can say, well, that's going to cut against you. They're going to say that they believe that your religion is false, and they're going to make fun of it. Okay, that doesn't bother me in the slightest degree. The point for Hatun was not to make fun of it gratuitously. The point that we were making in Garland was not to mock Muhammad or Islam gratuitously. The point was what Hatun is making the point in that shirt. It's very clear that Muslims are all upset about cartoons of Muhammad, but they're not all upset about the violence that is inspired by Muhammad's teachings.
Yeah.
And I know this to be true because I track this every day at Jihad Watch, and I've paid attention to it over the years. Muslims against terrorism rallies. Every now and then you see one. There was one in Washington about 15 years ago. There was one in Toronto about 5 years ago. They crop up every now and then. And invariably, Jay, they get about 25 to 50 people, and most of them are non-Muslims.
Yeah.
But you get cartoons, 800,000 people in Chechnya, 800,000 demonstrating against cartoons of Muhammad, hundreds of thousands in Pakistan, Indonesia, Iran. That's what really gets them angry. And so Hatun's point is absolutely crystal clear and very important to make, that this is what your priority is. You have a moral myopia that is warping your view of the world and is destroying your spiritual life. And you need to understand it and wake up to it and turn around.
One of the probably the best example that I always like when people ever ask me, well, who actually did this? I just used Jesus. Certainly, he did this in the temple, overturning the tables. He certainly did this with the
That's
Pharisees,
true.
calling you hypocrites, you den of vipers, you white sepulchres in Matthew 23. But the person I really like to point to is Paul. Look at Paul in Berea, Cappadocia, Laodicea, Ephesus. Every place he went right into the synagogue and he confronted them with what they had done to the Messiah. And they threw him out and they threw him into prison. He got whipped. He got twice stoned almost to death. He caused a riot in Ephesus. And finally, he was killed in Rome. Now, there's an example of a man that liked to provoke. There's a man that
Yeah.
used polemics. He had no problem using both apologetics and polemics, and he got beaten up just like Hatun is getting beaten up. And he
I
got
thought that was interesting too. Excuse me. But your commenter, Isaiah 40:22, says this situation is similar to what Paul had to endure, and the Muslims are very similar to the Jews the Romans had to protect him from. So is he saying don't preach because they'll get mad? I mean, in Acts 21, they try to kill Paul because they charge that he brought a Gentile into the temple, which wasn't true, and so they're lying about him, and they're going to kill him on the basis of the false charges. But what they're really upset about is that he preached the gospel. So what this commenter is essentially saying is that we shouldn't preach the gospel because it will offend them.
yeah, yeah. I I got an email this week from somebody in Europe. I won't say who it was. It was a woman, and she said, "Jay, you know Hatun very well. She respects you. She looks like you. You're like a avuncular relationship that you have with her. What you are responsible to stop this with Hatun. You don't you realize that she has a death wish, that she wants to be a martyr, and that she has a she has it's almost like she has a mental illness is what way she was putting it. She doesn't understand. She is naive. She doesn't know that she is actually walking to her death." And I had to answer, and I said, back in 2016, I came to the corner, and Hatun showed up at the workshop. We have a workshop before we go to the corner, and she was on crutches. She had casts on her leg. She had bandages around her waist. She had a broken leg, broken ribs. She had a neck brace on her neck. They had almost broken her neck, and she was sweating profusely. And I said, Hatun, where in the world have you been, and what happened? And here it had just 2 days before, she was at a mosque, and five guys jumped her, and then they actually beat her up, broke her ribs, broke her legs, and they were actually hanging her by her neck when she was able to reach in and get her rape alarm. In Britain, you're not permitted to use these sprays. You can't use pepper sprays; it's illegal. So all you have is an alarm that makes a lot of noise. And five Polish guys came and they jumped the guys and saved her life. Now she should have been in the hospital. She should have been in the hospital because she had a high fever with all the wounds she had, but she refused to stay in the hospital. She came down, wanted to get up on the ladder. And if you look at all the videos there from about September, October, November of 2016, she's on the ladder next to me, and she always has a kerchief around her neck, and she can hardly move her neck because she has that neck brace healing it. And I remember looking at her, and I said, Hatun, what in the world? They're going to kill you. They are in the process of killing you. You are going to die. And she turned to me, and she said, well, it's all your fault. And I said, what do you mean it's my fault? She said, you told me to read Matthew 23. You told me to follow what Paul was doing in the gospel, in the book of Acts. She says, I am doing what Paul is doing. And then she quoted to me Matthew 10. Matthew 10 is in a brilliant chapter. Maybe this is a good one we can end on. She says, look at Matthew 10. And I remember I had actually done the talk to her. She was actually quoting back to me what I had already preached. And if you look at Matthew 10, this is the commissioning of the 12 disciples. He's sending them out, and he says, I'm sending you out as lamb before wolves. And then he promises them five things. He says, if you speak in my name, you're going to be hated. If you speak and preach in my name, you're going to be persecuted. You are going to be jailed. You're going to be flogged. If you preach in my name, you will be killed. Those are the five things that Jesus was commissioning the 12 to do. Now, I remember when I was ordained as a pastor. I'm ordained. I assume you are as well. When I was ordained, I didn't have an ordination service like that. No one ever said that that was what's going to happen to me when I went out in with my ordination. And yet that is the model Christ left us. And then he says in verse 34, for I have not come to bring peace. I have come to bring the sword. I have come to set father against son, mother against daughter. The sword is going to be used against us. This is a sword that we're going to have to have against. We're going to be hated by our own family, our own mothers, our own fathers. And then verse 38, he who is not willing to bear my cross is not worthy to be my disciple. And I remember speaking about this to Hatun, and she just quoted that right back at me. She says, Jay, we are all commissioned to be hated. If we're not being hated, we're not preaching the gospel. We are all commissioned to be persecuted, yes, to be flogged, yes, to be jailed. She just got jailed for over 24 hours just on Sunday night. She has gone through all kinds of beating. They've almost got her within a point that far of her death. The only thing she has not received yet in that commissioning is the fifth one. And it seems to be that she's willing and waiting for the fifth one to happen. And I have to, I had to write back to this European lady. And I said, have you read Matthew 10? That should be normal for all of us who are preaching the gospel. Yeah. We should all expect. And if we aren't going to be hated, then what are we doing? If we aren't going to be persecuted, then what are we saying? If we aren't being jailed or being flogged, then is it the gospel we're preaching? Because the gospel, by definition, will confront. The gospel, by definition, will cause anger. It will cause huge amount of hatred, and it will be leveled against us. Even our family is going to be hating us. Look at Hatun's life. Her whole family absolutely hates her. She had to flee Turkey because of this. So in some ways, Hatun is really the normal Christian, isn't she? She is what should be normal for all of us. And I just praise the Lord that we have such an example. And you as well. God bless you, Robert, that you've had. I'm not here to praise you and give you a big head. I'm just saying it's people like you who have not acquiesced, who have had to be persecuted. You have gone through persecution from your own church, from your own friends, from many of your own supporters. You've had to do this, especially after Garland. The fact that this is something that has been part of your ministry, and yet you still keep pushing on. Why? Because of passages like Matthew 10. This is It is my commissioning.
This is the truth. This is the reality. This is what are we going to do? Just take refuge in lies to try to prolong our lives by a year or 5 years? It would be, how could you live with yourself in such a situation? But I did want to add one thing here. This commenter who says, if anything happens to Hatun, her blood will be on your hands. That's a terrible thing to say in the first place. And it's also howlingly false on so many levels, as you have just so eloquently explained. Hatun has chosen the path that she's taken, and she's an example that we should all look to. But also, if anything happens to her, and I hope that she exercises her ministry for the next 50 years, and that she does so in complete good health and without being further harmed. But if anything does happen to her, the people who did it are responsible, and nobody else. And this idea that it would be your fault is part of the confusion that is so plaguing the church and the Western world today, that we've lost a sense of who is responsible for what, and when something is done, who bears the responsibility for having done it. And so when Garland happened, the people who were responsible were the shooters, the people who wanted to kill us. They decided, they could have decided to have any other reaction to our showing Muhammad cartoons. They could have ignored it and stayed in Phoenix. They could have written angry letters or denounced us as Islamophobes. And instead they decided, we're going to murder them. That was up to them. That's on their souls. No. And if anybody does want to murder Hatun, it's on his soul and nobody else's.
Hmm.
And we have lost this, and so we think, oh, if they're going to murder us, then we have to stop doing what we're doing. And that is just the worst thing you can do in the face of Islam, because it's just what they want us to do is submit.
Yeah. God bless you, Robert. It's so good to have you on board. We've covered two very important events that have happened in just the last few weeks, and then, of course, just happened last Sunday. It's good to always bring you back to get your view, especially yours, because you've had such a wide experience in this area. You're not just talking from uh, off the top of your head or just from things that you've read. You're actually talking from personal experience, and this has been exactly what we need to hear. And I hope those others who are feeling the same way against Hatun, instead of confronting and castigating Hatun, why don't you actually support her and why don't you pray for her? Pray for her safety because she is willing to do what you are not willing to do. She is going where you will not go. She is down there every Sunday. She will be down there again next Sunday. I have never seen a tenacity in an individual like I have seen with Hatun. I think there are going to be books written about her in the future just because she is doing what I think our Lord Jesus Christ asked us to do. And that is to be commissioned, to be hated, to be persecuted, and yes, possibly even to be killed. That's the highest price. But then look where we're going. We're just going to go home. So God bless you. Good to have you again, Robert. This has been exciting, and I hope others realize that Robert, what he has gone and what he's done before, what Hatun is doing, what David Wood is doing, what I'm doing, Al-Fadi, Sam Schumann, there are many others. I could a whole list of others I should name. We're all in this together, and we're actually doing it for one reason and one reason alone, and this is for our Lord Jesus Christ. He went ahead. He did it. He never acquiesced. He never ever asked anybody to help him. He wouldn't even let Peter defend him. And if he didn't let Peter defend him, and then why are we getting so upset that we need to defend? We don't need anybody else but the Holy Spirit, and also His example to go and to follow. God bless you, Robert. It's been good to have you on board.
Thank you.